Hey everybody, it is Fabrizio Aiello, creator of Horace H. Hoover, a comic currently put out by Alterna Comics. Issues 1 and 2 are available at alternacomics.com. And tonight, I'm going to be drawing a page from that comic. This is issue 4. This is a bit of a montage you see here. I'm not going to get too far into what it is because it's a bit of a spoiler, but any questions in the comments, let me know. And I got to do some background music. Might switch halfway through the stream to another drawing that I've been inking, but we'll see. Sometimes you got to step away from the image, kind of get some fresh eyes on it. So when that happens, I might swap it up. Blue Teddy Narrations, good evening. This is weird because I have a camera on me. We'll see how this works. If my face splits in half and it turns out I'm a lizard person from V, then the ruse will be up, but hopefully that doesn't happen. Yeah, I wasn't sure what I was going to draw tonight, or ink. I have a few things started. You know, you want to make progress on the comic, but you also want to make sure you're practicing and trying other stuff, so. Thank you. Yeah, so this is like it's a big montage basically. And somebody, the book bug, sort of explaining to Horace who this demon is and what he does. So, and I put a border of like this essentially ribbon, but there will be text on it. So I'll have to find a language and translate it and use symbols across the entire image. Sounds tedious, but the end result is usually worth it, I would say. Hey Diana, how's it going? I'm doing pencils for pages, which hopefully one of these days when it's inked, I'll send it your way. I cannot explain how much flatting helps. It's a lifesaver sometimes, especially since I'm doing everything by myself. That extra step for flatting makes the coloring process just go quite a bit faster. Yeah, the ribbon is pretty fun. I try to make a conscious effort each book to really try some different things, whether it's panel layouts, number of panels, storytelling techniques, etc. Because once you get familiar with certain things, you know, for me it's... At first it was like, okay, can I draw Horace, you know, in all these positions and keep perspective and make sure all the characters have the right scale. And then once you sort of have a foothold on that, then you can be like, okay, I can do that. It's not perfect, but I can definitely do it. Can I do a 12-panel page? Can I have a whole army of people in a row that looks realistic, like it's going in back into space, etc., etc. So the ribbon was just something a little different, because my panel layouts are pretty... I'm not going to call them stacked because those are the ones I prefer. They're grid based, so they're very Jack Kirby-esque. So the sort of the montage with the ribbon is just a way to mix it up a little bit. Yeah, the other thing about the montage is I'm a big fan of stories within stories. And, you know, if you have a character who is telling a story and that's not on camera, if you have a character who's telling a story inside a story, any way you can visually make that as interesting as possible really helps it along. So I'm a big fan of that. You know, you always hear the show don't tell. Now, admittedly, I have some problems with that. Like, those rules, you hear them all the time, and sometimes they apply, and honestly, I don't think they apply other times. But if shown is better than telling, showing and telling is better than both. So have your character say something. They're telling the backstory of this demon, but show it as well with interesting setting and characters, and then you really have something interesting. I would like to flat that drawing. I like the details on your drawings. Thank you. Yeah, this one's going to be a nice, like, really big splash page. It's definitely the first montage I've done in the Horace miniseries. I did a review of Bern Hogarth's Dynamic Anatomy yesterday. It's one of my favorite books when I first started learning, I'm going to say comic book art specifically. Well, no, you know what? That's not true. I was in college when I first came across it, and I was taking an anatomy class, and everybody sort of had their own anatomy books that they liked. So I started referencing Bern Hogarth's, and I remember my professor was not too keen on Bern. But it's really like, I don't want to say whatever works for you, but it is kind of the key. Like, some books, the way they are set up and the illustrations, you know, are, for some people make sense, for some people don't make as much sense. So I'm trying to stick with top right to left to bottom, just so I don't smear the heck out of this drawing. But sometimes that's harder to do than you would think. You just see some spots that need work. Blue Teddy, I think you're onto something with both in terms of show versus tell, but I think it's a matter of when and where. Some things are intrinsically visual, but some ideas are better expressing words. Yeah, for sure. I didn't mean to imply that's always the case. You know, I can just imagine this quiet scene of somebody walking through a field or something, and that's just purely visual and works on that level. But I was talking about specifically like stories within a story. So like Lovecraft, he's sort of famous for going like 3 levels deep or 4 levels deep. So yeah, I just feel like rules, you know, people are really quick to throw rules out there that everybody is supposed to follow, and I'm less inclined to just take it at that stuff at face value. Again, for a bunch of reasons. I feel like I've read a lot of comics and a lot of books, and yeah, those rules are true to some degree, but it's definitely not. It's not always the case, and sometimes when those rules are broken, it's better. And they come back as always, well, you have to know the rules in order to break them, blah, blah, blah. Good thing about comics is you have more tools at your disposal. Visually and verbally. Is that a pencil sharpener? Yep. This is a pointer for, is this 7mm, 0.7mm? I always forget the actual size of this. This is all I use. It's a very sharp point. And then you kind of take the graphite dust off with this here. I typically actually don't like crazy sharp points on my pencils. It digs into the paper. I don't think it's super necessary most of the time. At least not for the way that I draw. You can change tone a lot by not showing something too, like take 18 plus scenes, showing those changes, the tone of the story dramatically versus fade to black, or mentioning that happened. Not trying to argue anything. No, I totally agree. And I actually have no problem with people arguing, even if you were. I actually like to hear people's differing opinions on art, because it's so different for everybody. Like, if somebody comes at something differently, I definitely want to hear it. I am not an expert. This is the first time. It is the first time I have seen a pencil sharpener like that. I assume it's for professional use. You can buy them. I mean, I know you're not in the U.S., but you should be able to buy them on Amazon. Pretty much any sort of craft store, art store around here. So my pencils are usually, I wouldn't say they're tight. I guess they're tighter than some people's that ink and draw. They would look at my pencils and think that they're pretty tight. I don't necessarily agree, but there's definitely quite a bit information in the pencils. That way, when it is time to ink, I don't have to think too much. Like, this is a rope, for example, you know, and as long as I can tell it's a rope, then when I'm inking it, it'll be fine. So however I want to ink this rope, will just be easier. But if I just did a straight line, and then that line looks like a crack instead of a rope, and then, you know, and then I ink it as a crack instead of a rope, then that just can get needlessly frustrating when inking. When I want to draw, I press the pencil to the paper a lot. It is difficult for me to draw smoothly. Also, coming from a theater background where what could be shown was limited by what was physically feasible and affordable, I think that was the main catalyst for moving towards comics. Oh, that's interesting. And what you mean, I can show anything I want? Yeah, theater's pretty fascinating. A good friend of mine does theater a lot, and he's the director So how he utilizes like sets, like economically, I find really fascinating. Because sometimes that really is, you know, hey, it's a chair, or it's a chair and a table, and that's all they use or something. And sometimes it just absolutely works. So I think that does force you to think in those terms. But as far as like not having to worry about a budget or anything like that, that is really nice. And to the point where, like something like this, for example, this would be like a big budget set, right? You have this crazy huge interior cathedral looking thing. You have this crazy temple like in the wild. You have hundreds of people, maybe thousands, going into the background. You have a big demon guy. You have a graveyard setting, and then you have this dude like lighting on fire. That's a lot, even for one small piece. So I try to take advantage of that. But to be honest, with my first short story, I purposefully, I mean, I could see that as a play. It's in 2 rooms. It's 2 rooms. It's 3 to 4 people, you know, because I didn't know where I could take it, how far I could push it at that time. So I'm like, okay, I'll stick to just a few rooms, a few people, and see how that works. Yeah, I think it was a rendition of Sweeney Todd. I think that was it a table and a chair? I think they were in like an asylum or something like that. I think that was the conceit or whatever. But I mean, it worked. Thank you. Yeah, no problem. Again, I'm just happy people pop in to chat. So this wing is a really great, almost like a pseudo panel border, because you have this scene here, and then you have the scene down here. So I really played up the wing to split that up. I think I said it before, like being able to draw tiny people is way more important than I thought. I was so focused on proper anatomy and perspective, and again, that's very important. But it didn't hit me for a while how important it is to be able to draw small people with gestures really quickly. You know, all these people in this line. Yeah, it's just really important. They have to be believable, even if they're in the background. It's important. You can't fudge that kind of stuff. Yeah, whenever I have to put the writing on this this ribbon, this is going to be a day's worth of work. Finding like a Sumerian translator or something online. But like I said, it's worth it, especially to know that I didn't just Greek in a bunch of stuff that I could have added value to. And especially for a page like this, which I'm going to spend a decent amount of time on the page, I might as well get the most out of it. And for the readers, you want to give them the most value that you can for the page too. In a lot of ways, limitations can be good for creativity, since they make you put your problem-solving brain in overdrive. But it's nice to have a situation where the sky's the limit too. Yeah, I think one does feed into the other. If you're forced to limit, if you're limited sometimes, and then those other times you're let loose, it's like, wow, you're just ready to, to do crazy stuff. Are you going to the ribbon? Yeah, I'm going to hand letter that. So that's going to be a little tough. Especially since it kind of turns and waves. I think it would be harder to actually to use Illustrator or even Photoshop and warp it. So I'll hand letter it. Okay, so I have a lot of this done. It's not like to its final detail, but it's definitely descriptive. So, for example, I know where the rocks are, I know where the people are, I know where the shadows are. It's quite a bit of information already. This has quite a bit of information. This little cemetery looking thing. And this guy performing some sort of ritual. I haven't done anything with the guy down here who is basically, if I can fit that, about to catch on fire. So for him, I mean, it's all about the facial expression. And if you get sort of the horror right of that, usually it works. He is either catching on fire or just saw a credit card bill or something equally horrendous. I really wanted to differentiate this guy from sort of just plain old guy in a suit, and I gave him a much older looking attire. I didn't want anybody to confuse him with anybody from issues 1 or 2 or 3. his hand is sort of a good example of, I try to, the initial positions of hands and faces, I try to do it as quick as possible with like a gesture. Excuse me. And so I don't think too much about, you know, where the knuckles are or anything like that. I think for hands, it's really important to try to get the gesture down as quick as possible. Sort of let your brain go on that one. And then once you get that and it looks okay, then you sort of like, okay, you know, the knuckles are here and your fingernails there. At least for me in hands, that seems to be the best approach. Sort of mechanically and technically building up a hand from bones, to me that never works as well. They always look really stiff. The other thing about having this other camera is everybody can see how bad my posture is. Although this isn't actually my drawing table, this is my computer desk that I'm actually drawing on, so it's not tilted or it's not on an angle at all, which is pretty brutal, which is also why I usually only stream for like an hour or so. Blue teddies. So I thought my hands were okay, but I usually drop pretty big. The smaller I go, the more they become resemble mittens. Honestly, that's not a bad way to approach them at that size. Like what I always do is almost invariably, if this is really small, I keep the second and the third finger together. I always keep them together. And then I'll, your first finger and your pinky are separate. So thinking of them as like a group is honestly not that bad place to start. Drawing fire is legitimately, it's very difficult. It has to be stylized. And it's just sort of like you have to commit to your way of drawing fire. I'm just roughing this in because I'll probably redo it. But if you try the classic flame looking thing that rarely, it looks like a spike or something, so you just gotta kind of So yeah, like, all right, this is how I draw fire. So hopefully, I'm probably gonna leave this, come back to it. But he got quite a bit more detail, so I don't feel too bad about letting that sit. Things like fire and smoke, trees, is actually really interesting to me as far as comic books, because it's things like that where reference just from comic books actually helps a lot. Anatomy, you can come to a comic book with your own sort of anatomy, and it'll absolutely work. But man, smoke and fire and trees and stuff like that, those are real specific. And comic book artists have already solved all those. But the kicker is trying to find what you need. I thought it'd be cool if there was a database of essentially art, comic book art, but you could search the database based on subject. So if you Googled trees, it brought up Mignola's version of trees. You know, you could see how David Mazzucchelli draws hands or something like that, as opposed to digging through your comic book collection, you know, grabbing a random issue and hoping that it's in there. That's the fun stuff. Organic stuff with with virtually no rules except make it recognizable. Yeah, it does stress me out though. I'm not gonna lie. I have to work on it. Because then I'm always afraid. I'm like, okay, this is how I draw fire. And then I'm like, is it? Is this how I draw fire? What if other people, you know? So that stuff does kind of stress me out. Trees and grass, stuff like that, I'm okay with now. Rocks, issue 3 was all rocks, so I'm pretty good with rocks. Fire's a little bit of an issue still. Clouds are always going to be an issue, I think, because it just doesn't come up very often. And that's where I should actually write a short story or something that makes me like do a whole issue of clouds. I think that's what, I could be wrong, but I could have swore Frank Miller said something like that. He hated, or he couldn't draw cars and women, so that's why he did Sin City or something, which I thought was pretty funny. Okay, definitely not done with the page, but everything has a fair amount of detail. Obviously I have to do a ton of his wing there. sounds vaguely masochistic, but hey, if it works. Yeah, I don't know if that was a joke on his part. I didn't think it was. So, I don't know. Maybe there's a Horace in the clouds issue on the horizon. No pun intended. Any sort of like bat wing or something is just, it's always fun. You don't have to worry about straight lines. You can really kind of dig in. So I definitely want his wing. I have to think about this. I don't know if I should just go really dark for that whole wing or not. Or just the end. There's actually a really bad tangent right here. That's like the side of his deltoid. That was at the exact same angle as this like vein in the bat wing, so I got rid of that. Definitely want this character to be the focal point. You know, even though there are like little mini scenes going on, highest contrast, darkest darks, lightest lights really should be with this character here. The majority of them, at least. So I might do the bottom. Especially the bottom of his wings darker. Gotta rough in the ribbon on the bottom. Or it is actually roughed in. And then I take a kneaded eraser and I essentially knock it back a whole bunch so I can just see the outline. I'll definitely hide something in this ribbon, maybe a good banana bread recipe or something. So I'm not a big fan of this top of the temple. It's one of those things where I kind of have something in mind, I put it in, but then if it doesn't work out, then I'll try to reference something. You really don't want to overdo like the tentacle monster-y kind of thing, so. I don't know. I don't know if the scale is coming through. I'm appalled at the implication that tentacle monsters could be overdone. Yeah, I mean, how about on any given page at once? Not in general, but maybe, just maybe, there's one page where there's just a few too many tentacles. Hey, Reverend Saber, Dr. Mask, Metatron's Cube, thank you. Thanks for joining me. Yeah, so this is a page of issue 4, and it's a little montage, sort of bordered with this ribbon, which I'll be writing some sort of language. Lots of hidden stuff in that. Yeah, sort of a montage with a few little snippets of scenes. Christopher Salinas, you give me old school monsters vibe. Love it. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Yeah, I'm pretty old school. It's just sort of the era I grew up in, but honestly, when I go back and revisit that stuff, I think it still holds a lot of weight. So, not that there's anything inherently wrong with new stuff, but it's just stuff that I still gravitate towards. Even stuff that was before my time, that I've since gone back and caught up on old books, old comics. Got a second camera now. I've had this camera, but I was always concerned to have my face while I was drawing. But I'm like, well, we'll give it a whirl. We'll see if people run in horror. Not for my drawings, but for my face. It always feels, I don't know. I don't want to say impersonal not to have me on camera, but I mean, sometimes it just felt a little weird that I was sort of talking with my hands and nobody could see me. If it's any consolation, we mostly see the top of your head. Oh, yes! That is awesome. That way it appears that I'm contributing, but you've just seen the top of my head. I like that. Yeah, I would need a camera essentially mounted where the paper is. I guess I could try to do that, maybe. I just want to make sure I'm drawing on camera. I realized when I was inking the other day, a lot of the stuff was getting lost. Yeah, this will definitely be the first. What's Fabrizio drinking? Does that mean you know of my podcast? Did I mention the podcast? I probably did. I'm drinking very cold coffee. I don't know what kind of coffee it is. What kind is it? Is it Dunkin'? It's decaf because I've had my fair share of caffeinated coffee for the day, so I had to switch to decaf. You know what I should do is actually find those episodes of What's Fabrizio Drinking. Post them. You know what? I never Googled. Well, I haven't Googled What's Fabrizio Drinking in a long time. It used to come up on Apple iTunes, but it was removed. So I don't know if that would. I'm going to Google that real quick. Let's see. 'Cause nothing lasts, right? No, I don't see anything. All right, you know what? I'm going to do podcast. Podcast. Darn it. No. Darn it. Oh well. that page as well. Thanks, Minitron Cube. Yeah, this is pretty fun. Definitely like a high point for the book. This is issue 4. Yum, I have Tazo Wild Sweet Orange Tea, no caffeine. Yikes, that sounds great. Jeez. Instead of my very cold, non-distinct coffee. Oh, you did try it. Yeah. It was, I mean, it's got to be at least 10 years old. I gotta track it down. Because this is going to bother me now. But I do remember iTunes, what they did was they sent out an email years ago and basically said that they were like purging all of the old podcasts, and you had to do something you had to have an update in order to keep your channel or something. This is like, geez, I don't know how many years ago this was. But I will do it. I will track down what is Fabrizio drinking. I even have a mug. Yeah, I have a mug that says what is Fabrizio drinking. And I've had that thing for, 10, 11 years. I don't know how long ago that was. Okay. So I think I need to get a little more detail on these characters here. These slaves pulling this as of yet unnamed thing. So maybe I'll do a little more into there. Dr. Mask, you should have one of your Horace H. Hoover mugs to drink out of while you're drawing. You know what? I actually do. So this is the first one. This was like... I was still working on Horace's head. And he's just saying, curious. I even have HHH. Yeah, this is like... I can't remember when I got this made. But it was very early on. So these characters... Thing is, I don't want to go too dark because they should recede a little bit into the background. This big guy's the main focus of the montage. But I just want to make sure there's separation between certain parts so we get their gesture very quickly, that they're pulling something in tandem, and that they're in like rags, so they're slaves or something like that. So I just want to make sure that you can read really quickly what's going on. Oh, I dig that. The horse mug or just the drawing in general? Yeah, that was a one-off. I don't think I have that one, but I could put something similar on my store, but I'll definitely be able to clean this up inking, but can't hurt to do as much as I can now. Well, both. Thank you. Yeah, and basically, as each character sort of proceeds, they'll have less and less detail, obviously, till we get down to basically little circles for heads. Because if you try to draw every character, it'll actually it'll be so confusing you won't even know what's going on. Now, admittedly, there are some artists that kind of excel at drawing like masses of people, but I still think that it's harder to read. It's really impressive to see it when people do it, like, geez, I'm blanking on his. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen artist, Kevin? Yeah, I'm blanking on his name. Somebody will catch that. He does these crazy scenes, and he draws everything. But his style kind of lends itself to that. O'Neill. Yes. It was funny because his style at first was a little jarring to me. Yeah, it took me a while to get into the style. Just because how he draws people is so... It's definitely stylized, and it, the backgrounds and like the Nautilus and all that stuff, he does incredible work. But how he draws people is so stylized, it really took me some time to get used to it. And I wonder, I don't know if I've read anything else that he's drawn. So I don't know how his style would translate for other sorts of stories. That would be interesting to see. Yeah, this rope has to be huge. I drew a tiny little rope. Have you read his martial law stuff? No, I haven't. Yeah, I think... No, I know that League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is the only thing. You know what? Now that you mention it, I have seen images of that. But I haven't read anything. Okay, I actually think that's pretty good for these characters. I would recommend it. He is a superhero hunter. It's a dystopian future similar to Judge Dredd. Oh, that's definitely my style. composition's pretty good on this. And the thing that is important to keep in mind for me, though, is, okay, so if we have the composition that, I mean, this really kind of takes your eye in and around. It really works well. Now, he is obviously the focal point. You know, he's the most forward character. You know, when I'm lettering this, if I find that the composition just needs a little extra help, then I can just change the lettering location to guide your eye a little more. So that's just one more way I can kind of help the composition if I think it's weak. Although in this situation, I actually don't think it's weak. But it's nice having that extra tool to use. And I mean, if you have a letterer, you can kind of expect them to do that for you, but you don't really know in the end. Composition reminds me of Muka Slav epic paintings. As in, if I'm thinking of the right thing. Oh, wow. Yeah, I recognize these, but I wasn't, well, not all of them. Man. Thank you. That's high praise indeed. These are fantastic. Jeez. Wow. Problem with Kevin O'Neill was that he was slow. I think by the time he got to League, he had kind of pared down his style. Wow. I could see that. I mean, he goes nuts. And if he pared down his style for League, then wow. I can't imagine what he did for that martial law. I'll definitely have to check that out. Even just for the art. My reading time has been distinctly limited. But there's always some books that I make time for no matter what. I'm a pretty big economics fan, so in my spare time I do try to read some economics. I know that doesn't sound like it applies, but I kind of think everything applies. Anything that you consume, sorry, just trying to imply scale by putting little details everywhere, but this painting's totally messing me up. Yeah, everything you consume really comes out in the wash, so to speak. Even if it's another character that you make, and this character is a particular sort of, has a particular philosophy. You know, I'm gonna say that this is a giant painting. Yeah, I'm doing tiny little, which you can't see. Doing tiny little paintings here. Extremely small detail just to help push the scale, potential scale of everything else. It doesn't have to be exact. It just has to show that, okay, these things are pretty big. You know, it's funny mentioning that Kevin O'Neill was slow. There are definitely times where I don't know what slow means. As far as deadlines, you know, back in the day, you had to meet your deadlines, and if you didn't meet them, then you're definitely slow. You know, a book a month for some people, for a lot of people. Well, I mean, heck, for some people, it's more than one book a month back in the day. But now with crowdfunding and sort of these really long timelines, it's hard to judge where you fit sort of in the grand scheme of things. Like I don't know how fast or slow I am compared to sort of current day comic artists. Alrighty. Can work on his wing a little bit and then probably call it a night. I always think of Brian Boland. I know he's sort of supposed to be slower, but his stuff is just so incredible that I'm like, I'm okay. I'm okay waiting for Brian Boland. Not to say I'm Brian Boland, but there are some artists that are just so good that it's worth the wait. Your line work is incredible. Thanks, Revan. I appreciate that. Well, you're definitely fast in terms of crowdfunding. Interesting. That's good to know. Yeah, as far as being fast or slow, the one thing I always think about is, and I mentioned this a little bit, is that whenever I get comfortable doing something, I try to experiment with something else. I mean, this page is a perfect example. I don't have any like montage type images in Horace H. Hoover. So I'm like, you know what? I feel pretty comfortable doing all of the other stuff. I'm going to do my first montage and see how that works out. So even if I sort of pick up speed one way, I could potentially slow myself down by experimenting. Maybe, I don't want to say more than I should, because that's half of the fun of drawing, is experimenting. You're not slow for the amount of detail. Well, that's good to know. Yeah, I trying to think of... I mean, I know a lot of people draw online, of course, but it's rare that I see comic book pages. Most of the time people are doing sketches or just random drawings, but it's more rare to see actual comic book pages, so that's why it's a little harder to judge. It is 11 by 17, yeah. I think it's all over the place. Kirby used to do 3 pages a day, but guys like Ethan could only do like 8 issues a year. Keep in mind they had pencils and inkers and colors. Yeah, Yeah. I think Buscema was pretty fast too. I remember hearing him doing a couple of pages a day. All right. What was Dave Sim doing on service? That was a black and white comic, and he did it all. I'm not sure how often it came out. Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, some of that stuff is absolutely incredible. Am I wrong? And somebody probably knows better than me. Did somebody else do the backgrounds for him sometime? I could have swore I heard something like that. I could be totally wrong. But yeah, some of that stuff was just amazing. But I don't know how often that came out. I definitely think I need something behind him. At first I was just going to do color, but I don't think that works. So I need at least a hint of rocks, mountains in the background, something. I know a lot of people just skip out on the backgrounds, and it works for some people, but man, it just does not work for my drawings. Some styles are just faster to render than others, yeah. It's possible it happens a lot hiring someone to do backgrounds. Yeah, I just don't think that they're very vocal about that ever happening. You know, they probably, at least back in the day, you know. Marvel gives an intern some city backgrounds to do, but I don't think they ever get credit for that stuff. Oh, that's right. I forgot to talk about, in my post for the tweet, I said I was going to talk about the brief point in my life where I was raised by bats. And I was told the story recently that when I was a child, like in a high chair or whatever, I was a baby. Everybody was in my living room. I have 3 older brothers. We were in the kitchen, I mean. And a bat flew into the kitchen. And my entire family left me. They ran into the basement. I actually think this is an episode of Malcolm in the Middle as well. So I was left upstairs with the bat for I don't know how long, until they realized I was gone. So I like to say that was a time in my life where I was raised by bats, because who knows what that bat has impressed upon me during that brief time. Maybe that's why I like weird stuff. But it's funny that I just heard that story. Is that why you decided to fight crime? You know, I'd like to think it was subconscious, that the bat maybe did something or said something that I'm not aware of, that someday will, like Manchurian Candidate, like, just happen, you know? At least that's what I'm hoping. Alrighty. Take one last look at this. Yeah, have a good night, Dr. Mask. Thanks for popping in. Appreciate it. So we have this large stone-like shape being pulled. Got some logs underneath so it rolls out of this cathedral-looking type thing. We have a little temple over here. And we have these slaves, the ones pulling it. We have this big guy here. Somebody doing some sort of ritual in a graveyard and then lighting on fire. But I'm pretty close to getting this done. As far as the main shapes, I would say maybe a little bit more detail, like in his hand, his leg here. Maybe a little bit more on the rocks. That way we have a little bit of darker, like pushing her eye over a little bit. And then the very arduous task of writing in this ribbon. Captain Goodnight, you use Egyptian imagery and bird-headed creatures in HH8. Is it a coincidence that Horus is a homonym for Horus, the falcon-headed Egyptian god? You know what? I missed your comment yesterday or the day before. I totally missed it. And then I got off the stream and I realized it later, so sorry about that. As far as the coincidence, it is not a coincidence. That is as much as I will say. But the fact that you're putting that together is darn impressive, Captain Goodnight, I have to admit. I think I'm being like super sly about stuff, and then you just pull things out of the background and all these little clues I'm given. So that is pretty awesome. Yeah, it's definitely not a coincidence. There will be references and other things that pop up for sure. Intrigue. Yeah, nothing's an accident, and nothing lives on its own. So everything I'm doing, I really try to make sure it has more than one life. You know, if I introduce a character, it's not just for one story. If I introduce a concept or a place, it's definitely going to have a life of its own. Egyptian vacuum powers confirmed. I don't think that phrase has ever been uttered in the history of mankind. I think, Metatron's Cube, you are the first person to ever say the phrase, Egyptian vacuum powers confirmed. I think we can all safely assume that. All right, sounds good. Well, thanks everybody. I appreciate you popping in, taking a look. This is a really fun montage, and I'm not sure what I'll do next stream, but I will let you know. Chuck Lee, hey, I'm here for the first time. Hey, Chuck Lee, how's it going? I have never seen your name before. Thank you. I'm actually just finishing up, but I try to stream at least 3 or 4 times a week. And I will be on Twitter to let everybody know when I'm streaming. If not, you know, just subscribe and like and do the notifications, just in case. Thanks, Metatron's Cube. Anyway, everybody have a good night, and I will talk to you later. Bye.